Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. For me personally, psychedelic medicines have truly assisted me in waking up to the truth of who I am. And as a result of these experiences, I have been able to find the people, places, and passions that are truly meant for me. And one of those individuals is today's guest on the show. We met recently at an amazing music festival called Confluence, which was centered around the total solar eclipse that took place back in April. And as soon as we met, I could tell we were soul brothers from other mothers. From working in tech and designing video games, to rediscovering his love for his heritage and tapping into various Eastern medicine healing modalities such as acupuncture, it's safe to say that for any of you who have been challenged in finding your way and finding the approval of family members and friends alike, that this episode is going to allow you to recognize that no matter what challenge you're going through, that these challenges are only being experienced by you to shape you for your purpose in life. So, without further ado, please give me a big hand in welcoming my man, Charlie Trinh, to the show. Charlie Trinh, my man, so excited to have you here with me. You know, as you all just heard in the intro, Charlie and I got to meet at Confluence, a music festival out in just outside of San Antonio for the eclipse back in April. And it was so amazing getting to dive in with you, man. You ended up in the Vibe tent with us quite a bit of time, aka the Lavish Hippie tent, run by my buddy Ty. I got to get on the show too, actually. But, you know, we had such a great conversation, man, around, I know you were talking with Rachel about astrology. I know you're in school for acupuncture. And, you know, I know that your journey is one that's really cool because I see a lot of what you're doing is bridging science and spirituality in a certain way, right? You came from the tech space, or rather the medical space, and got into tech, and now you're back to kind of a combination of the two, because acupuncture is a technology, right? It's an ancient technology, and it's also medicine, you know? And so, dude, before we dive into all the facets that are Charlie Trinh, I'd love to know where this started for you, right? Like, how did someone like you that has that kind of mind for tech and medicine and all those things, how did you stop saying no and potentially start saying yes to the idea of psychedelic medicines?
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for this great introduction, too. You know, I think a lot of my journey is very similar to a lot of us who experience the big no's of like, you can't do this, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I was in pre-med in high school, you know, I experienced some of my own medical difficulties, and I realized that medicine was not giving me the answers. And so I went into kind of holistic healing where I ate better. I started to do detoxing. And that was kind of like my personal journey on the side where I actually went deeper into tech. I was a computer science major, graduated, went to Disney to work and make games with them. So I went from like a technical person to more creative manager running tech systems. And so I love the gaming experience because that's actually connecting to that visual tech, right? I don't like just coding and seeing words. I rather see pictures and beautiful things that you can engage with. And that's kind of where a lot of my first half of my experience is in working at Disney making games. However, in that appreciation for creativity, I ran into many blocks. And that blocks was the mental disorders that we don't talk about, the mental illness that no one talks about, which is really our ability to be creative was so stagnant at that point where my job required me to be creative and I couldn't. I was just getting stuck. And so what happened is I found that was a block, and I kind of had to go deeper into what is it that I need to go into. And I was already doing all the healthy eating and all the nutritional and all the yoga stuff. And none of that was helping mentally because I felt like there was a block. And that's kind of where I got deeper into cannabis first. And at the time, you know, I was just recreationally doing it, you know, here and there with some friends. But I was like, no, actually, let me go deeper into this, because when I do go into cannabis, something triggers me into actually breaking down my inhibitions to be more creative. And so that's kind of where the beginning of that psychedelic, or really that plant medicine started for me, is the cannabis space. And when the creativity became more apparent, then all the mental issues started to come out and really came to face with it. But because I was already in this creative space, it allowed me to actually face my shadows in a much more creative and fun way, where I'm a game designer. So I literally just game design all of my mental issues so that I could face them like, like Zelda. Here's a cannabis plant. Use this to go figure out what all your, all your own shadow work is. What is it that you're still having issues with in life? And when that happened, I realized that, and at that time I was in Los Angeles and it was still kind of illegal at the time. And so I was trying to figure out how to come to terms with that. How does a whole system tell us that this is not good for us? Yet it was the only thing that actually got me through a lot of my creative blocks and my mental illnesses, or what people like to label mental illness. And so I really had to go look down and say, you know what? Maybe there's more to what we're not allowed to look at. And that's when the journey, where people call it a gateway drug, technically probably is, right? But really, I call it mental illness was my gateway to a lot of these plant medicine and psychedelics. Even the word psychedelic is psychology first, right? And so when I went into actually computer science, I studied psychology next to engineering. Because if I was going to go into what is today artificial intelligence, but at the time was really what we call behavioral marketing, where it was actually trying to understand us, it was all psychology. And so the psychology and the medicine and then psychedelics really got deeper into the psychology of the subconscious. And that's kind of where, as an engineer, as a coder, I was like, wait, you just told me I have access to my root code? And so I went deeper into, the mushroom world. I've done ayahuasca, I've done wachuma, and some, I call plant medicine. I do not call it drugs. Whatever people label it, they were just plants that our people, indigenous cultures use and access to actually heal a lot of these what I call dissonance to reality. And so for me, when I really finally got into the psychedelics, I felt like I became more of myself. And I really was accessing this natural flow of being self, rather than living in the conditions that your family, your friends, your coworkers, cultures, or even how people look at you and what they consider that to be, who you're supposed to be. And so the psychedelic experience really kind of tapped me into just being myself a little bit more, and really actually allow me to heal a lot of these mental dissonance that I was having, becoming myself versus how the community experienced. And so when that happened, it got closer into this journey that the tech space wasn't where I was meant to be, because there's still a lot of limitation in technology, right? Because again, it's unfortunately, it's a very male-centric experience. So again, I wasn't experiencing the breadth of humanity, right? Male and female together. And so I was struggling with, again, another mental illness is, where are the women? How am I, a game designer making games for women, because I was making games at Disney, but yet I was a male and I was trying to understand that dissonance of, the masculine, feminine being separated. And so I left, actually, at the end of the gaming experience, I was making virtual reality games. And that's when, the person who was there with me, he's like, what do you want to do? We can create anything we want in virtual reality. So what do you choose to do? And I specifically said, I won't touch any guns or violence, because I believe we're perpetuating this. I'm a psychologist, right? So as a psychologist, you're literally programming your psychology to train yourself to play these games. And so if you're just killing and shooting things, and you're actually breaking down some kind of moral code in your subconscious. And I felt that very strongly. And so actually, this is the beginning of my astrology journey. I decided to go deep into astrology, and as a coder, someone said, here's this language of the world called astrology, using these foundational basics. And when I got into it, I felt like Neo. I was like, you mean I can tell people that this is how they think and their subconscious is working? And so in the virtual reality game, I really wanted people to actually put their chart as their character sheet. When we play games, we want to be this great hero in the game, but a lot of our stats are based on fake reality. These are not our stats. This is not us when we create these characters. So what if I created a game where it was actually your astrology code, and the game you're playing actually, subconsciously triggers you into your own development of you as the hero's journey. And so that's kind of when I really broke down into breaking down what astrology was and the code behind it. And so, my best part is when we finally launched the game, we had a celebrity astrologer called Leo King. And he came in, he experienced it, and I really loved it. But that's kind of when I realized, again, this VR is for boys and for men. And I'm clearly not talking to the women audience where, as you can see, when I talked to Rachel, there was such light in us in being able to talk about astrology. And so I couldn't be in the space of talking to astrology with people who didn't get it.
Yeah.
So that was my beginning of like going deeper into what the psychedelics were teaching me is like, how do you tune into yourself so that you are actually living your code and your gifts, because your gifts were meant to be worked with other people. And so I was, again, this mental dissonance was the fact that like I felt this way, but I couldn't live that way. And so I chose to really just, what people say, waking up from the dream. I woke up from the dream and said, I will no longer kind of let the dream take me on a path, or maybe this time I can choose to create my own reality. And that's kind of where I realized that I actually am in the virtual reality. It is life itself, and the reality in the world is the game that we are being put in. And so that's where kind of the psychedelics was really this deeper, like, I feel like psychedelics allows you to access the root code of your consciousness when you're not able to have enough time to analyze your subconscious mind. And so being able to work with the psychedelics really kind of taught me to actually have a conversation with my subconscious reality. And when the subconscious reality kind of basically teaches you that you're living already in this video game reality, I decided, okay, this is the game. So what's the problem with the game? And I felt like the problem with the game was people weren't getting the feedback the game was supposed to give us, right? When we do something right, and we are supported by the community, that's a feedback loop, right? When we have initiations in communities and indigenous cultures where you're like 16, you go through like, as men or women, we go through an initiation with the community. That's the game. That's the feedback loop. That's kind of what teaches you what's happening internally, subconsciously, and the community gets it, right? Versus today, you have so many people trying to like figure their mental disorders by themselves, or through like one person you pay who sits there and supposedly listens to you, right? And then gives you, well, I don't know exactly all your problems, so come back tomorrow because I still need to get paid, right? Yeah. Versus psychedelics, one dosage, geez, like one dose, I would not want to do it the next 2 weeks because there's so much to process for me. So that was kind of like my deeper journey. And at the end of virtual reality, this is where kind of like you start to have deeper conversations with yourself. Some people call it spirit. Some people call it my guides. Some people call it higher self or super consciousness. But this voice told me to go home to Houston and to kind of wait for the next chapter. I was like, it's like the video game quest came up as this optional quest may reach a stronger, development. Are you willing to take this road? I'm like, well, nothing's working out here, so why not? So I took a huge chance, trusted my inner guidance, and I ended up in Houston with family. And because I lived with family, I had the ability to actually go back to school. And a beautiful story where I had someone, she was tuning in to her ability to see spirits. And so she would actually say to me, hey, you seem to be open to what I'm going to say. Do you know you have someone who follows you? He's an elder man. He might be your great-great-grandfather. He's got a Fu Manchu. He's an acupuncturist or an herbalist. And you can see my face going, oh my God, are my ancestors following me, trying to tell me something, right? And it was so specific that I just couldn't deny it because, I hadn't told anybody about this experience I was having with kind of like my ancestors trying to, speak through me. And when she said acupuncture, I was like, oh, okay. I think I know where I need to go next. And so I decided to go back into medicine, into my own heritage as an Asian American, because ironically, the same thing that happened to us and cannabis, right? Don't do cannabis, it's illegal. I hear the same thing about our own medicine. Acupuncture, pseudoscience, don't listen to these Asian people that you think, but like these are my people. These are literally where my ancestors come from. And so to be in a space where people are shaming and guilting you on, and even our own family, we have a lot of Western doctors who, as Asians, obviously, we have Indian doctors. We internally fought about what was considered medicine to each other. And unfortunately, acupuncture and Chinese medicine or Asian medicine is looked down in my own community. And that was really hard for me because I was suddenly not going into medicine that my old family thought was ridiculous, right? And so, but this is kind of where I think the power of psychedelics are. It gives you the conviction to be yourself no matter what. And, at that point, I decided, you know what? I've constantly been told what not to do, what to do. So now that I've got to the point where I was feeling more in line with who I wanted to be or who I am, I decided, nope, I'm going all the way into this medicine. And acupuncture and herbal medicine has been, it really recoded my operating system. I thought I was running a Western operating system, the genetics of, the East. It's like saying, I'm going to run a PC Windows on top of a Mac, but you've always been a Macintosh, right? And so for me, it's kind of like recognizing that like my own genetics vibrate to this medicine. And so I decided to kind of go further in, and here I am 5 years later when I'm finally coming out of this hermiting of, reprocessing my operating system and then finding amazing people like you, right? The whole experience in Confluence was because I felt like I've been cooped up and this was also during COVID. So I love that COVID happened and I got to basically hermit and study my medicine. And then when COVID is ending, I come out too and I'm like, hi, by the way, I just got a whole new operating system. Who's around that like wants to reflect what I'm going through? And that's why Confluence showed up and I had, this great connection with everybody. That's why I was like, okay, the entire psychedelic experience is super important to actually give us conviction to be ourselves. And that's why, this connection that we're having, it definitely stems from a psychedelic experience, but it's also outside of psychedelics, because as a psychologist, the number one rule you learn is classical conditioning. So I classically condition myself to be in the energetic vibration of the medicine and eventually not to need the medicine, right? So there's days I don't need the medicine and I naturally feel like I'm already high or I'm already on mushroom. And because of that, it allows us to actually be the medicine itself. I feel like when we are accessing psychedelics, it's just reminding us that we have these abilities.
Yeah.
And so, today now I'm coming out of being a doctor. I've had these different varied experiences. And I'm also now starting to realize we got to speak up. Like a lot of people think, oh, you're a doctor, Charlie. You must not do this. And I'm like, why do you think I cannot do this? Because I'm a doctor, right? And so this idea that, I'm a doctor and yes, I've done cannabis. Yes, I've done a lot of these psychedelics. And actually, because of these, I'm actually able to be a doctor today because I was struggling with my own healing journey. And if I didn't have this aspect of being able to go deeper into my own medicine, I would still kind of be living disjointed to my own gifts. And that's kind of where, it started. And today I'm, very excited to be here and to be able to meet, amazing people like you, Ryan, and the whole crew. I mean, that tent was amazing, super high vibe. So I felt like I had a psychedelic trip to be with you guys. So it was amazing.
Likewise, bro. It was so amazing having you there. Rachel and I have talked a lot about you and just how much we loved you and your partner as well. And you guys were just so much fun to hang out with. And, we've been to a lot of music festivals. It's kind of like I always joke that I was raised at music festivals, not literally, but I've gone to a lot of them. And I've experienced a lot of things at a lot of them. And what I loved about Confluence was that, again, when you go to a festival, obviously there are people that are going to be connecting with certain medicines, right? Or potentially even what people call drugs, right? Or things like that. And I'm fine with that because I think personally, there's nothing more human nature than screwing with your lease on reality, right? And shifting, right? Being curious. That's what it means to be human in my eyes. And so, of course, like I resonated with music festivals for a long time because that's where I could find my people. It's where I could find people that were eternally curious about the mystery of what the hell we're experiencing right now. And what I love about psychedelics that you shared with me as well, they really have an ability, like it's almost like this, man. If you think about what substances are psychedelics, right? Like how they're created and how they're grown. You think about cannabis, psilocybin, and ayahuasca. We'll look at those three, right? Let alone wachuma and things like that. But you look at those three medicines. Why would God make the medicines that are psychedelics some of the hardiest and hard to eradicate medicines on the planet? Like you think about cannabis, right? They call it weed because it will grow anywhere. Of course, if you want to maximize the potential of it, yeah, there's some things you want to do, right, when you're growing it, but it'll grow anywhere. I mean, fuck, cannabis grows in Siberia. It literally genetically modified itself into a different subspecies called ruderalis that will literally flower on its own in very low light areas. So like, think about the design of that. Then think about mushrooms. Try eradicating those. They grow from shit, like you're not going to get away from that. And then ayahuasca vine will literally grow through cement. So we're talking about some of the hardiest things in existence that also, in my opinion, and I think you share this opinion, and I imagine many people listening to the show do, some of the most important things on planet Earth, right? Because as we go throughout our lives, I was a psych major too, right? So I love psychology. I love diving into it because to me, it is the operating system. It's just the computer operating system. And if it works correctly, it allows you to get on the internet. It allows you to do great podcasts like this, and it works out great. But if you get viruses, well, depending on the level of virus, you might still be able to get in the computer, but it's using up a lot of your RAM. It's slow. It's not really working right. Worst case scenario, your computer doesn't work at all, So what I think psychedelics do so well is that, therapy and even some coaching, right? And I love coaching, but therapy and some coaching for me personally, in my own experience, they seem like trying to work on the virus from the normal operating system, whereas psychedelics seem like operating from safe mode and going behind the veil to remove that virus. And for me, the question becomes, what is the most efficient route? Because the most valuable resource in our lives is time. So if I can get to a desired goal quicker, right, then I'm going to do that. Does that mean that psychedelics are always going to get you there quicker with no hiccups? No, of course not, right? You put a jetpack on, you'll get to California faster, but there are some added risks, right? So again, like a big reason why I made this show and everything is to share people like yourself that are talking about how they've utilized these medicines in a transformative and healing way, but in a very safe way as well, and how to mitigate risk and things like that. But that being said, if you think about the fact that these medicines can literally defrag your entire subconscious in a matter of hours, and we're seeing that not only in our experience directly, but in the phase 3 trials of MDMA and a lot of the actual science coming up behind this now, if something can defrag you that quickly, and also there's some of the hardest to eradicate substances on planet Earth, you almost think that God maybe had a conversation with himself and was like, yeah, we got to make these really hardy because by the time the monkeys figure out they really need them, they shouldn't have eradicated them by then, And so that's kind of how I think about it, is that they're very hardy because they're very important to the human species. And, I think that this whole thing you talked about too, when it comes to technology and medicine or science and spirituality, the thirst trap that people that are big on science or people that are big on spirituality fall into is that they think it's one over the other. And,
Right.
I like why I love biogeometry and qualitative sciences like that is they say, no, it's a yes and it's both, right? Science is very valid. Spirituality is very valid. They're really just the masculine and feminine way of interpreting this info that is higher and deeper than just ourselves as this like fractal of separation, infinite awareness from creator, right? So, I love that ability of you to be able to dive into both and love them both and see both their strengths and also know that they're meant to be put together. Because I think that's the big thing that I see so many people, and this is not just in this argument, but many things, just wasting time arguing why their side is right, instead of realizing that really, if we are the creator of our own reality, anything we choose to believe is right can be right. But at the same time, the universe is not meant to be a subtractive type universe, right? Like everything is here for a reason. Everything is needed to understand everything. We can't take one small component out, one microcosm, and understand the entire macrocosm from that, So again, at the end of the day, I think it's about doing a yes and involving these things together. And what I love about what you said too, about finding your way back to your own heritage and your own version of medicine and what was resonating with you isn't that the fucking goal? For anyone listening right now, is not what Charlie just said the ultimate goal, to be able to actualize and remember why you were truly meant to be here in this time, in this incarnation, in this meat suit? Again, like we all have unique fingerprints that have never walked the planet and will never walk the planet again. And our mission in this lifetime, so we choose to accept it, is to figure out what this unique set of fingerprints can do that no other set of fingerprints ever can do or will do. And that's not to say that it's more important than a different set of fingerprints. We're all equally important, but we're all equally unique as well. And I think people get that confused a little bit. Like, yes, we are equal, but that does not mean we are the same. those two terms are not synonymous, you know? Equal in worth, yes. The same, no. We are unique, and we're meant to be unique because what you're really good at, I may not be really good at, and I might hate doing, right? And vice versa. And so if I try to do the things that you do that I don't like, well, all I'm doing is wasting my power zone doing the thing that actually I would love and get lit up by, that then you could benefit from. And if we decide to trade, right, now we're both able to stay in our power zones, do what we were fucking put on this planet to do, and we're able to help each other. And who are each other? Just ourselves in different incarnations walking each other home. So I love that you really articulated all that, man, because I wholeheartedly agree. And I really feel like that, I mean, your journey is the exact hero's journey, man. It's so inspiring, dude, because you know, it is the road less traveled, you know? I mean, again, like, I think a big part of, you know, me wanting to make this show and have people on like yourself and the other guests that have been on is to show people like, not only is this possible, but none of us are unique in the ability to do this. Like everyone can actualize, everyone can choose to wake up in this lifetime and truly figure out why they're here. You were not born with a silver spoon. I was not born with a silver spoon. I made a lot of quote unquote mistakes, even though I don't see them as mistakes, right? You know, and again, like, I find that a lot of people are afraid of what will people think, what will my family think, etc. At the end of the day, if you leave this planet, right, and you go to your infinite place, it's almost guaranteed that if you have family that are preventing you or kind of speaking up against what you're doing, best friends that maybe you're like, Charlie, I don't really get what you're doing, man. Chances are they signed up to be in that role because any challenge that you're meant to go through in this lifetime is just warming you up to access your purpose more. So chances are some of your greatest adversaries in this lifetime are actually your best friends in your soul family. And they specifically signed up to be a quote unquote thorn in your side, but they're not really being a thorn in your side, right? When you actually wake up to what they're doing, they're the one that's saying, are you sure you got this in you? So you can go, yeah, I believe in myself. And when you believe in yourself, anything is possible. And you become that lighthouse, man, that can light up the entire world and share with the next person that like, you can be a lighthouse too. And you can do it different than I ever could, right? And your lighthouse is needed just as much as mine because the people that mine will reach are not the people yours will reach and vice versa. And if it's only one of us out there lighting up the world, right, then a lot of the world is still going to be in darkness. But if we all understand how to become battery chargers and lighthouses, then I don't know what that ripple effect is, man, but it's going to throw a lot of light on the planet. And that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah. I love the analogies you tend to use also with the technology aspect, because I also use technology as my way to also use very common descriptions or metaphors to help us understand. I want to go back to the virus conversation.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Real quick, just because I think it's a very brilliant description of really actually society as a whole, right? You know, and as an engineer, I went to study viruses. I was like, wait, I don't understand. You know, like when they talk about viruses in our reality, right? And we think that they come from somewhere. We don't know where they come from. Yet in the computer world, you know, viruses are not just happen. They actually are created. Someone actually builds them, right? And so what's really ironic is, you know, like the Windows operating system experiences viruses, but the Macintosh operating system doesn't, right? And this is kind of that deeper conversation of why some people get sick easily versus some don't. And I feel like this is the inherent problem is how open is your operating system to be influenced by those around you, right? And this goes back to the psychedelics, where you said our psychedelics goes to safe mode and goes, hey, safe mode, what is the operating system? Because something is running us against our code. And so what happens is psychedelics, or really in general, a lot of these plant medicine, or really these what I call First Nation medicines, they go back to the code of the root axis of source, right? We are source trying to experience through an operating system. And so what happens is where Western medicine loves to kind of go, hey, you have this problem. Let's just hide the problem so you don't feel this problem. You're like, but it came from somewhere, right? It came from an operating system having a virus being able to access your operating system because you're an open code. You actually allow people to influence you so much that you are running against your operating system. And so what's really beautiful is when we talk about this and we talk about, you're born with immunity, right? We're born with all these abilities to have a closed system, and we can choose what inputs that we want to take in and then integrate that. But what happens is we're living in a world now where we're bombarded by external input that to me are viruses, right? They don't, like a mind virus. COVID was ironically this beautiful mind virus where it didn't matter whether you had it or not. Just the idea that you might have it was already a virus consistent enough to break your operating system. And this is where people had these breakdowns, mental breakdowns, because the outside world was influencing the operating system. And so where we go back to first medicine is their job was always to go back to the operating system that you had chose to live by and to close all the broken loops that you may be running because outside forces infiltrated your root code, right? And so, this is the same thing with acupuncture, this idea that actually your root code is based on these organs. And so there's meridians that spread out of these organs that allows us to tap our fingers to then access these organs, right? So we have the ability to press buttons on our hands. We have EFT, we have reflexology, we have auricular acupunctures, right? So hermetic rule is correspondence of everything within us is outside of us. And so when we're able to really tap our own systems, we're able to actually heal the operating system from within and then actually create a closed container so that no outside input can influence our operating system. No viruses can influence the code. And that's kind of why, it's silly where I love kind of, Alec and what he was talking about, this whole idea that germ theory is a lie. I was like, brilliant, because that's where I was too. This idea that our psychology is actually creating its own attack on itself, right? I really believe that Masaru Emoto, in his ability to prove that water was changing depending on your conscious thoughts of this water, and how water went from this beautiful rice wine when you had water and rice and you're saying, I love you to this container. And then when you said, I hate you, or you ignored it, you would get mold in the water. Ironically, when you take an X-ray picture of cancer, it looks like mold, right? And so this is kind of where, as we get deeper into the quantum physics mechanics, medicine's like, oh, but we don't touch physics because physics is not, medicine. And ironically, to get an acupuncture license in California, you are required to have physics. And so a lot of people were upset. Oh, why are you putting physics into medicine? I was like, first of all, you're an electrical being. I'm putting metal rods. As an engineer, I understand electrical voltage and how you move electricity from one end to the other because of the higher voltage versus the lower voltage. That's the same thing as if your hand goes numb, you have a low voltage. Nothing is going to that hand. So putting a metal needle next to that hand to allow voltage to come through allows the energy to come. We call it energy, but really you could go back to the specifics of it. It's just electricity that's running through your hand, right? And so that's the physics. And this is, again, yes, what else is medicine? The whole body is all of sciences. Yet when science goes, oh, no, your body is only bio and chemistry, then what happened to the rest of science that you just decided to like, oh, no, there's a little line right here that you can't touch, right? And religion does the same thing, too. They're constantly using quantum mechanics. Praying is entirely quantum mechanics system, right? Where they're telling everybody to consciously create a reality together. This is kind of the Maharaja effect, right, of meditation. And so, this is kind of why I love being like a spiritual science nerd, right? I was like calling people out and say, hey, you're saying the same thing in different language, right? Like it's like same thing saying, oh, are you French or are you English? Well, English is a better language, but I can still communicate the exact same thing in French. I have actually multiple languages. And so I'm able to understand different people. And you realize language for pain and suffering, you don't need words for that. You can look at someone and go, yes, I can tell that's the same emotion I'm having, right? I don't need a language for that. And that's kind of why I really appreciate where things are going, because I think a lot more of us are playing into spiritual science and really coming in as like alchemists going, hey, you're forgetting it's the yes and what I call the improv model, right? Is that you don't ever discriminate against someone's perception of reality. right? And this is where the biggest problem what I experience in Western medicine is you come into your office, you go, doctor, I have pain. The doctor's like, none of your labs prove you have pain, so you must be making it up. What? How would you ever tell someone who's experiencing subjective pain that they were making it up? Because you already paid for a $20 copay. I did not waste my time to pay for a copay for someone to tell me I'm making it up. I could have just stayed home and have my whole family think I'm making it up for free, right? And so that's why it's really interesting that, I'm not here to bash any industries, but I think as people who are finally learning to see how we're so interrelated, interconnected, we need to really go back or really, adjust some of these industries that have said, hey, these are our boundaries. I'm like, there are no boundaries when we are all one and the same, right? And so that's why I'm really excited to see that psychedelics and plant medicine, even just regular herbal medicine, you don't need to go through psychedelic. If I can heal all of your headaches, you're going to have a psychedelic experience now because suddenly you're living in your brand design because you don't hate having this headache. You're not so influenced by your headache that you're making decisions off of trying not to have a headache, right? And that's, again, this fear-based healing process where it's all about offsetting your sickness rather than just making you healthy so that you can't be sick, period, right? And that's the deeper conversation that I try to have with people. A lot of people are like, thank you, doctor, for healing me. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're mistaken. I didn't heal you. I just made sure that your body knows what to do to heal you. Yes. I'm just there to support you because you have chosen to trust me, but we are still, I am you and you are me, and you chose to make this relationship so that you can activate your own healing. And that's really the deeper conversation of healing for me. It's never been that I'm going to be the one, because frankly, if I go away, I'm going to be so, as a ghost, I'll be so upset that I can't help everybody, right? And that's not the right mentality as a healer. I think for me, it's holding space so that people can have the experience to trust that they can do their own healing.
Yeah, 100%, man. Dude, that was, mic drop, bro. That was so good. And I totally agree, bro. Like I say it all the time, I'm not a healer. I'm not a shaman. I'm not any of these terminologies. All I am is a messenger on the road that will wait for the invitation. I'll make invitations, right? Like in my community all the time. I'm mentioning what I do with crypto. I'm mentioning what I do with trusts. I'm mentioning what I do with business. And I'm watching for who hits me up after and says, hey, man, tell me more about that. And then I'm like, sure. Because like you said, I never want to interfere with someone's level of consciousness because I don't know, it's very easy for the human mind to think, hey, I did this thing that really helped me. It must be able to help everyone. And it's a great intention, right? It comes from a great place of you wanting to provide something of sustenance and healing to someone else. But even if that modality did help them, how do you know that this is their lifetime where they're meant to figure that out, right? You don't know. And so the best thing you can do is not assume that you think you know the best thing for someone, but to be the shining example of what that healing you went through, or what that psychedelic experience you've gone through, or what that business you run, or whatever gets you charged up. Be the exact representation of what that is embodied. And the souls that are ready are going to start asking questions. They're going to hit you up and say, Charlie, you look really happy, man. Or Charlie, I remember when you got started with acupuncture, man, and now you're really crushing it. Like, how did you do that? And that's their soul saying, hey, I'm looking to wake up a little bit more. And there's the opportunity, right? And that's like a big thing that human design taught me with being a projector, is waiting for the invitation, because I really feel like projectors, right? And this is what they tell, at least about projectors, is that we're here to kind of teach, right? And be teachers. But at the same time, it's very easy for us to push our own reality on others unconsciously, right? And I did that for a long time. And I would get really triggered over the fact that more people wouldn't, take what I said and take it seriously. But then I started realizing, wait a minute, first of all, it's not all about you. Second of all, this person's soul may actually need to go through this lifetime in a place of suffering to wake up in the next lifetime, or maybe the next 10 lifetimes, and that's perfectly okay as well. That's their health in this lifetime, and I love what you were talking about when it comes to, COVID and the whole idea that it didn't even really exist, because this is exactly what I'm on. And for anyone listening, again, you can call me a conspiracy theorist. You can call me whatever. You guys probably won't, because you're listening to a show about psychedelics, for God's sakes. But, when you look into the actual research behind germ theory and all the things, because that was for me, when I started hearing about that, I wanted to believe it at face value. I resonate with that. that, again, everything is backwards. So why wouldn't the idea of being sick be backwards too? If finance, medical, healthcare, purpose, if everything else is backwards in the society, it wouldn't all of a sudden be randomly accurate with that. Like how we do anything is how we do everything. So for me, I took it at face value and I'm like, I could totally see how that's true. But then because I knew that if I was going to talk about this stuff, I would have to have at least some evidence or at least have read into it a little bit. I started reading into it, dude, and realized that in scientific terms or scientific studies, they've never once isolated the virus. Now, does that mean they don't exist? I don't know, but it means they've never isolated one. And if it was that common, right, if we were getting viruses all the time, like they say we are, wouldn't it be pretty simple to isolate one? So again, like, things like that, but again, I don't make any conclusions out of it, but I resonate more with people like yourself, people like my buddy Paul Chek, people like that, because at the end of the day, the only thing that doesn't lie in this lifetime are results. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. You could work with someone who does steroids and believe that they know how to get big muscles. When in reality, like, yeah, they know how to get there, but not through a means that's actually going to be beneficial for you long term. And so at the end of the day, you have to look at the results, right? You have to look at the results that someone doing steroids, for instance, will give them, right? Organ issues, anger issues, acne, all those kind of things. And you start realizing like, okay, you got the big muscles, I may want that, but I don't want the other stuff, So again, results are the only thing that doesn't lie. And just in my own life, when I look at the people getting the results I want, they're all sharing a very similar sentiment, which is everything is backwards, nothing is as it seems, and you are the creator of your own reality. Those three things. And when I started to believe into those things, because I was following the people that were getting the results that I wanted, true freedom, true connection, cup overflowing every day with abundant energy, taking, accountability and ownership over their life, being the victor rather than the victim of their stories. They were all believing these things, and I resonated with them too. So I started moving more into that category. And all of a sudden, when COVID happened, I had the best time of my life. Like you were saying, man, I got amazing time to build my business with no distractions. I got to fly all over the country with extremely cheap flight prices. Got to meet amazing people all over the country, have amazing experiences, go to Mexico, do all these amazing things. And, a lot of people around me were like, oh my God, the world's going to end, etc. And for me, I was like, maybe it will. But if it's going to, I definitely don't want to go out sitting in my bedroom scared that the world's going to close in around me. I want to go out with a fucking bang, So no fear, because at the end of the day, if we understand negative and positive polarity, like Aaron talks about all the time in the Law of One, then it's pretty simple. If you're in a state of fear, you are now susceptible to the powers that shouldn't be that are also running off that fear, that negative polarity. But if you choose to let fear go, right, and realize that you are an infinite being, and the worst thing that happens is you die and you're infinite and you start losing that fear. Well, all of a sudden you start going more towards an oriented positive polarity view and you start being of love. And when you are coming from a place of love, the powers that shouldn't be can't feed on you because that's not their energy source. And so at the end of the day, another way to say this is when you choose to be of service to others, when you choose to be in a place of love, you will not get sick because sickness does not come from those things. It comes from fear. And when you look at people like Paul Levy, great books, dude, great books to dive into. For anyone listening, The Quantum Revelation will change your life in terms of how quantum physics applies to life in ways that you might not have understood before. And then Dispelling Watiko is this whole idea that he calls it Watiko. It's been called different things throughout antiquity, but this idea of the mind virus, that the only real virus out there is the one that we get in our mind because we're susceptible to powers that we are unaware are influencing us before we have turned into adults and taken accountability over what is getting into our minds. And like you were saying in the beginning, right, with the violent video games, etc., Rach and I, whenever we watch movies, man, it's always rom-coms. I don't care how cheesy it is, dude. I want to watch a movie where I feel good when I leave. I don't care how cheesy it is. I don't care what it sounds like. I fucking love rom-coms because every single time I leave feeling good. And that for me, if I'm going to spend time getting entertained, I want to leave feeling better than when I got in there. I don't want to watch TV and movies and things like that about destruction, killing, etc., because I don't want to feed on fear. I don't feed on that. I'm not choosing that in this lifetime. I don't judge anyone that does. I did it for a long time. It's not like I'm a high and mighty, I've never done it thing. But I just started realizing, like, I don't feel good when I watch those things. My mind doesn't feel good. I don't sleep as good. I wake up with a lot more negative thoughts. And so I had to take accountability over that and realize, like, well, Ryan, if you want to be the creator of your own reality and you're the one that's watching these shows, what can you do about it? Well, I can change what I watch. And when I change what I watch change as well, And so it's funny how that works, right? Because as within, so without, as above, so below. That's why I love hermetics. It's why I love a lot of these things that are simple in nature, right? You learn 7 hermetic principles, but you could meditate on each one for a year and still be understanding it to deeper levels at the end of that year. So it's really amazing stuff, man. I'm really glad we're talking about this. It's cool stuff.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention, so I really think, because you're bringing up studies and research, and I think the deeper conversation I think our reality has, and where people are struggling with, is the outsourcing of their own divine connection, right? And I think that happens because we have removed what's called individualized medicine. And the reason that happens is, I really think the biggest gaslight in medicine is studies. Who pays for the studies? Who even shows up for the studies? And if you're trying to heal someone, why are you looking at the people who are sick? Why aren't you looking at people who are healthy, right? And so this goes back to that we're literally creating a structure around fear-based concepts. How do people get sick and get better? Well, you're never going to ask those people who get better to be in a studies. That's not part of the studies. So inherently, the studies is a giant gaslight for, you have a problem with yourself. You need to go and look at our evidence, because our evidence, the only evidence you can trust, not the people you literally are talking to, and they're saying these things. No, only the ones that we have tested that can tell you that these are their problems. And ironically, some of these tests, they did not even include women. They did not include women in these studies. So again, how can you have the entire population be reflected by just certain men who showed up in their studies, right? And that's, for me as an Asian American, like, how many Asians were in these studies, right? Because my genetics is very different. So, inversely, like, what you're doing should match. And so what's really interesting is, what was hardest for me in Chinese medicine is the diagnosis section. Because diagnosis requires you to be so present with the person that our job is to tell people, you are sick today and you are a different person than you were 2 days ago. Because 2 days ago, your sickness may have changed and it went somewhere else. And now I have to treat you where the sickness is, not where you said the sickness was when you felt it 3 days ago, right? It's so ironic that we have changed into a world where we get to choose how to cook food now. I get to go to Chipotle and get exactly what I want, but I go to the doctor and they'll look at me and go, oh, you have a headache. Here's the pill that's going to solve all your headache problems. But I'm a different person who has a different headache. And actually, in Chinese medicine, there's like 5-6 types of headaches, right? Because the head has multi-facets. And so you have different, what we call tensions, depending on where it is showing up. So one headache does not say that it's the same headache for, especially for women who are going through kind of their cycles, their headaches are different. Yet, how is that headache pill the same as, the headache pill? And also in their process of when they're starting their cycle, the beginning of the cycle is very different from the end of the cycle. So they're a different person. And that's why it's very difficult for people to kind of not trust that their body knows what they need. They really trust that, these studies says that all these types of people should take these pills and that solves their problem. Yet I can order what I love to eat, made to order, but I can't do that for my own medicine. And this is kind of one of the major things that we do is when we look actually at diagnosing a person, we look at your eyes, we look at your nose, we look at your mouth, we look at your tongue, we look at your pulse, we look at the color of your skin, we look at how you're talking to me. Are you talking like this right now and feel very depressed? Clearly you have a problem, right? And so these are the things that we will notice and say, your condition right now is this. So here's how we're going to adjust the medicine today, right? And so this is kind of where a lot of people get upset. We're like, well, that medicine took 3 days to work. I'm like, how long did it take you to get sick? 6 months? And you expect a magic pill? So you're going to hope that your problem goes away, but you spent 6 months dealing with this problem? And that's kind of where, there's a lot of re-education in being able to tell people, when people walk through my door, I tell them all the time, like, please, are you going to put in that effort too? If not, then you can come, but I'm not going to ask you to come back because you're not choosing to actually do your own work. A lot of times, lifestyle changes. When we tell people you're too stressed out, they go, I know, just fix it and I come back in a week because I have stress that's coming again. And you're like, so at that point, what I felt like was like in classical conditioning when a rat wants to eat something, it presses a button and it gets fed that, right? I felt like that when people were just coming to me and paying me just to like keep needling my problems because I just don't want to change my lifestyle. I don't want to change that I sit on the computer for 8 hours. I don't want people to tell me I can't do that. But then I come every day and get the same acupuncture needle and they feel better for a few days or maybe an hour before they go back to their computer and sit there, right? And so it's really important that, we as healers have to also be willing to kind of share ways that they can change themselves and really inspire them to change for themselves too, because they are in charge of their health, right? And this is why, again, we gaslight that your health needs to be paid by who? Your insurance company, because they really are sitting there in the doctor's office listening to your diagnosis. The doctor who spent 5 minutes looking at their chart going, oh, okay, nothing went wrong. So, right? Or you get the worst is when people come in, they have all these subjective issues and then all their lab results, it's okay. And the doctor goes, when it gets worse, come back. Until then, try out these drugs. And you're just like, what? You never addressed it. You just gaslit me into another issue. This prescription might totally give me a whole side effects, but none of your lab results have really given the evidence that I'm going through this, right? And so this goes back to this idea that I think we've been gaslighting ourselves. Well, I need a proof that this works. When people tell me, how do you know acupuncture works? I go, do you know what's the biggest race in this world is? Chinese people. They literally had to tell them, stop having babies. There's too many of us. So how did they live? They clearly didn't have Western medicine until today, right? And then you can have a conversation. And now they have a problem. They have to make more babies because they are dying very quickly because they have forgotten their medicine. And this goes back to like, what's your proof? We didn't die for a long time. That's my proof. It's so funny that they love to like separate proof as in like, it has to be in a study to be like real evidence. But yet the people that we experience every day should be our evidence because we are all scientists, right? Like you were saying, you experience stuff, you adjust it, and then your life changed. That's what scientists do. We are always absorbing the world, making objective point of views, trying to understand what's happening, correlations, and then we adjust, right? Yet I need to go get a 4-year degree to go do research, but then I get to have to pay. People have to pay me to actually do research that I care about. And that's kind of why, today there is a mental dissonance where we don't get to do what we love. We are always prohibited by whether or not we are funded for our passions, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I feel like, the greater problem, why psychedelics, I think, is becoming the biggest really underground medicine that everyone is going through, and why a lot of people have left regular traditional medicine is that we don't want to wait till everything is broken for us to actually heal. We're choosing to heal from inside first, and we realize that we don't need anyone to gaslight us into some kind of new drug that they got paid by the pharmaceuticals, right? So I'm really excited that there's so many of us who are starting to, as we were met at a sovereignty ranch during the eclipse of Aries, where Aries is all about sovereignty of the self, is we are starting to have this greater awakening that we are in charge of everything that we do, right? And so if you are triggered, it's your experience. Yes, someone triggered you, but that person could disappear tomorrow and never see them again, and you're still living with that trigger, right? So it is still your responsibility to process that trigger because you're living with it. Because now that triggering, if you're upset now, how many people have you now gotten mad at someone because you're feeling triggered, right? And so this is kind of like that ability of like recognizing our sovereignty in the healing process so that we don't easily pass it on to somebody else, or we don't let someone tell us what we need because our body is always telling us what we need, right? So this is kind of this deeper conversation of medicine should be listen to your body. Your body's talking to you constantly. When people are like, how do you know it's talking to you? Look at your tongue. What color is it? That's your body telling you there's an alarm, right? And so a lot of, ironically, a Western prescription is like, if I cough a lot, it tells me I have a lung issue. But Western medicine say, turn off the cough. Like if there's a fire alarm, oh, this fire alarm is stupid. Just turn it up. But do you not realize there's smoke and fire in the kitchen? No. It's just a fire alarm that's the problem. It's not. There's no smoke. What are you talking about? But the smoke detector clearly found a problem, and it's telling you there's a problem. So when we turn off our cough, when we turn off some of these kind of ways that we're telling our body something is wrong, it turns off the alarm. And so what happened is now suddenly you're like, oh, your lungs don't work anymore. Well, how did it stop working? Well, actually, if you look at it, you've been coughing for 10 years chronically. So maybe your lungs have been deteriorating for 10 years, right? Oh, great. What can I do? Oh, you know what? Western medicine is so good at working in the red lines, right? It's so bad now, I can get you a whole new lungs. But you know what? We can grow synthetic lungs for you because you don't even need this lung. Just throw it out. Wait, you're telling me biomechanics cannot regenerate my lungs? No. Let's just put metal lungs in your body and then we'll sustain that through electricity. I'm like, again, this is where Western medicine likes to remove parts rather than figure out how do we fix it from within, because mitosis tells us that we can regenerate everything. So the conversation is, why is basic science not used in this medicine? Because the basic science still works, but yet by the time you're showing up to a doctor, they're not using basic science anymore, right? And that's why when you have people say, oh, you don't believe in science? I go, no, I don't believe in your belief in science.
Yeah.
Science is not a belief. Science is just, facts of the interaction of our reality. But we have created political science to show that there is agendas behind science and evidence. So that's kind of like my big thing about trying to be a healer and really kind of help people connect to the healer within.
Dude, I love that, man. And yeah, it's really funny. Like, have any of you guys listening stopped to think, why do we ever need a kidney transplant or an organ transplant if when we were born, our body somehow knew how to grow all of these organs, right? Like, you ever think that's not still in our DNA, that we could tap into that and regrow anything? There was a Gaia show I watched where a guy was using lasers to regrow organs in mice, and he would actually give the mice cancer first, like take out their organ, and then like shoot a certain laser at a certain part of their body and we regrow this organ for them. And that's like already happened, guys. So if that's already happened, just think what's behind the veil that they haven't released yet. And you touched upon the funding thing too, right? And I got hit up probably 100 times after Andrew Huberman went goofball mode into cannabis, because he went into all of these studies, which I'm like, Andrew, you're a smart fucking guy, dude. Like, you're really smart. How did you miss this, right? The fact that every single study he referenced, if you go look at who actually funded that, they had a vested interest in cannabis ending up, quote unquote, bad. If you're a researcher right now in this country and you go try to get funding for anything positive with cannabis, you will be denied. The only way you get funding is you have to be trying to find a detriment to cannabis. And even if you get funding for a detriment, guess what? Cannabis is the only cannabis you can actually work with as a researcher. It comes from NIDA in Mississippi, and it is literally, Peter Grinspoon nicknamed it the moldy mush strain. It is god awful, dude. It's full of mold, right? They harvest it there and they freeze dry it for years and they send it out, and it's like absolutely horrible. It makes Mexican brick cannabis look like the best cannabis ever, right? And so think about the fact that you're studying cannabis with a strain that was grown horribly, traumatized, mold on it, everything. And you can only even get the funding and get that shitty cannabis if you're trying to find a detriment with it. And then ask me if you think the research is accurate. It's like, that is my issue with not science, right? But what we've been told is science, which is big companies with a lot of money trying to sell more things. So they're controlling science to get it to say a specific thing that fits their narrative so they can sell more of their solution. That's really what it's turned into. But that is not real science. When the pandemic was going around, it was really funny, all the people that said, trust the science. And I'm like, apparently you guys don't know what science is, because a true scientist never trusts science, right? The whole idea of science is we test it until it breaks. They're looking to find where they can't trust it. That's the whole fucking point, right? So it's just so funny, man. But dude, this has been absolutely amazing, Charlie. I can't wait to have you back on, bro. We could have literally riffed for 3 more hours, dude. This is absolutely amazing, dude. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they find out about everything you got going on? Tell the people where they can connect with you, man.
Yeah, I'm starting to, build a YouTube channel. It's going to be Dr. Charlie Trinh. I'm really kind of expressing myself as a doctor and what that means and that healing journey for everyone, just because I think people expect doctors to have all the answers. I'm like, no, I'm a scientist just like you. Just because I have all these facets under my belt doesn't mean that I don't have all the answers. But together, hopefully we can kind of come together and bridge that gap. So I'm going to be on YouTube. I have an Instagram called Cosmic Trinity. That's TRINHITY. That's my last name. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm really kind of starting to come out again. And because now I have to also process that I'm a doctor. So I'm trying to come to terms with that. yeah, so those are the places you can find me. You can email me also at drcharlietrin@gmail.com. That's kind of my new email. So if you're interested to learn more about acupuncture or just in general medicine, I think I want to kind of bridge acupuncture, astrology, and pranic Reiki healing together and make that a medical system, because I think the mind, body, spirit needs to have these modalities coming together to support everybody. So those are kind of like the deeper conversations I'm going to go into. So Ryan, thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to share kind of what I've been going through, to have this deeper conversation about psychedelics. I think too many people have such a wrong stigma. Again, the evidence showing the wrong thing, right? Because no one looks at the evidence of people who are actually doing really well using the psychedelics. So I'm really happy and so excited for you to be able to share this with the world. So thank you for allowing me to share mine.
Yeah, you're very welcome, man. Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure, bro. And I got one last question that I ask everyone, which is this. Let's say someone listens to this episode and they're like, dude, I'm excited to check out psychedelic medicines in my own life. What is the one piece of advice that you would suggest to them to allow them to use the proper discernment in choosing whether or not these medicines are right for them right now in their life?
You know, I think people underrate muscle testing and physical or body mechanics. I think it's so important to ask yourself these questions first, and go deeper and say, what is it that I need to heal first from? And are these medicines right for me? Your body will react. Your body knows exactly whether you get goosebumps, whether you get nothing, whether something happens, your body already knows what it's hoping for, right? It's trying to tell us, but we have been told your body doesn't exist. Like, no, your body constantly is telling us stuff. And so if you're able to really go into your heart space and feel kind of the vibration or it's really the subtle reaction of your body, it will tell you what you need to go through. So, really trust in who you are, trust in your own abilities to know what kind of medicine you need to go through. Because the psychedelics no one will tell you to do it. It should be a personal thing that guides you into a journey, because in the end of the day, when you're in that psychedelic trip, you're on your own. You're accessing divine wisdom. You can't have anybody who told you to do the medicine to be there with you, right? And that's this deeper connection that you're able to then trust yourself to make the decision that are right for you.
Dude, I fucking love that, man. Wholeheartedly agreed. Guys, I know you enjoyed this show. I'm not even going to say I hope you did. I know you did. Charlie is absolutely amazing, and he's got so many incredible things going on. This was barely cracking the surface of everything that is Charlie Trinh. We're going to have him back on for sure. If you guys enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a 5-star. We appreciate you so much. And wherever you guys are in the world, I hope you're having the best day ever. And as always, may the force be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace, everybody.